we can talk about taking fights a bit. Because this is kind of an example where I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you didn't really have a like idea of where you should fight right now.
Yeah, I wasn't really aware where the enemy team was.
Yeah. And taking fights, like taking advantageous fights, is something that is really difficult in this game. In the sense that it's difficult to get consistent at. And that's something that like competitive players work a lot on and like do a lot of team exercises on, and just because it's like really, really important to playing this game well. And there's kind of a few core ideas about taking advantageous fights. And I think that just intuitively a lot of those come up. So let's kind of try to make a list right here. And I'm going to ask you if you have like a few ideas on what makes a fight advantageous for you.
Well, I guess one thing that doesn't come up with my weapon super often, but range advantage would be
Yes.
the first thing. Height advantage kind of plays into that. Numbers advantage.
Range is something that, yeah, with T-Tech doesn't tend to happen a lot. Sometimes you still do. Like really short range weapons, you can still outrange, and sometimes people actually just underestimate how like much range this weapon has. So yeah, that's two really big advantages. Range obviously because the enemy can't shoot back, and numbers because well, that part is a bit more complicated. I'll get back to it in a second because there's something that's like a bit more underlying than numbers, and we'll see what exactly that is in a second. Okay, there's something like a few more things. One of which is like really, really core to this game specifically, and it's what separates it from other shooters. Do you have an idea of what that could be?
Paint.
Yes. Paint is a really, really big advantage. And it's something that, for example, in this situation, you didn't have much of.
Yeah.
Where we kind of like pushed into an area where we couldn't move around much, and because of that, we got chipped by the crab and then punished by the blaster. It really, really, really is a very big advantage, and people underestimate how big of an advantage it is if played correctly. It's kind of always fun to see people underestimate the kind of core gameplay loop of this game of like you put down paint and then you play with this paint. And paint is the most important thing in the painting game. Crazy. But yeah, what paint allows you to do is move around a lot in fights. Because something that's really valuable is to make yourself difficult to hit. If you can like move around in between shots a lot, especially on a fast weapon like T-Tech, and just like move around in your ink and like make them miss their shots because movement in ink is really fast, then that is really, really strong. And that's something that Paint allows you to do. Paint gives you like so much movement options and limits the enemy's movement options. So especially against slower weapons, they can't really do anything if they don't have Paint. And like if you have Paint, you can afford to take the fight a bit slower because you have a big advantage in just being able to move around and like move back and forth a lot faster. And like your teammates may be able to follow up on you faster because there's more paint for them to move around with. And it really, really, really is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And that's why like people pick paint weapons in competitive, and why having good paint coverage is really important. Okay. Is there anything else we can come up with?
Element of surprise, I suppose.
Yes. And that is really important because kill times in this game are really fast. In some cases, it's a one shot. With your weapon, it's like half a second or something, maybe a bit more. But it's really fast. Also, the text is getting a bit difficult to read at this point.
It's fine.
Okay.
I can still see.
That's good. And so surprise is really strong. Something that like specifically I want to bring up here is sharking. Sharking is just like hiding yourself in your ink and waiting for people to kind of cross by for you to get a like good opportunity to catch them off guard and just splat them really fast. And that is interestingly, also something that paint helps a lot with. But like sharking is something that's really strong. If you saw some of the games I played earlier, like at one point I was able to get into a position on like the left side of the map where they didn't expect me, and like through sharking there, I like got a double pick with a bomb or something. Yeah, so exactly, element of surprise, sharking, stuff like that makes engagements really easy for you. I have 2 more things I want to bring up, and at that point the list is getting to a large enough point that we can stop. Do you have any other ideas?
Not really. I think those are like the ones
Okay.
that immediately came to mind.
That makes sense. Those are like by far the most important ones as well. So something that's really helpful as well is a bit of a smaller one, but having more ink tank than the enemy.
Oh, yeah.
Just because then you may be able to use your bomb, then you can stall out fights a lot. If you know you have more ink tank, you can just like play the fight slow and wait for them to run out of ink. Stuff like that. And then another like relatively big one actually would be special advantage. This is one that's a bit more like coordination based, and something that would be a bit more important in competitive play. But it still applies in solo queue a lot, because if you have specials, it's just a lot more likely to be able to get good advantages and good opportunities going. So that's actually another thing we saw in this engagement right here. The crab tank right here was able to tip you from like pretty much across the map.
Yeah.
And because they had special advantage, we kind of stumbled into a fight that was really difficult to win. Okay. This one is a bit smaller, we can kind of forget about it. But the other 5 are really important. One thing I wanted to get back on numbers is that if you don't watch out, then numbers advantage doesn't actually mean much. There are a few important steps to numbers advantage actually meaning something. We'll talk about that in a second, because I don't want to I want to get back to the game basically, but we'll keep that in mind for later.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, again in this situation, they had special advantage, they had paint advantage, and they also had effectively numbers advantage, which made the fight a bit difficult. I'm spectating the wrong person. I think, like, especially considering that like your Lunar Blaster was on your left, it would have been a better idea to take this angle right here.
Yeah.
Okay, because that really goes into how to take good fights, which is basically taking different angles. If you know that like your teammate will come from here and has an angle on the enemy team from here, then optimally you should aim to take a different angle than them. You should aim to go in a position where if the enemy shoots at your Lunar Blaster, they don't also effectively shoot at you as well. So like if we take this fight from here instead, then these are 2 very different angles they would have to look at. Just like kind of trying to stay safe over here, because the sword will be annoying poking under lead. But like from these two different angles. Like if someone is on tower, they should realistically die, and if people are here, then they still only can really like look at one of those people. And that's basically what advantageous fights in terms of teamwork are all about. It's not just fighting with your team, because if you fight with your team and you two are on the exactly same spot, then that's not even that good. Sure, you have a bit more firepower, but also you may block like your teammates' shots with like your body, and also if the enemy shoots back, then you both die. So taking good fights with your teammates usually means taking different angles, while trying to like kind of focus on the same enemy, but from different angles, so they can't really shoot back at you both from the same time. And that's what I mentioned earlier with numbers advantage. Is that numbers advantage is really, really strong. It's probably the strongest advantage in this game. But also you have to play it right. If you have more numbers than the enemy, you can't just like brainlessly run into the enemy base, because the enemies will probably still punish you for that. They like maybe they're sharking, maybe they're just pre-firing you. That's not something you can do. And you also can't just like stay on your teammates' toes all the time. You'll have to like basically try to find positions where you and your teammates are kind of looking at the same area but from different angles. So in defense positions, that usually means like taking different high ground angles, like taking different angles on these kind of high grounds that we talked about earlier, especially this right here. Maybe someone going through street, maybe someone even trying to go through bunker. Yeah. Let's kind of think about advantageous fights real quick again. And just real quick as an example, why is this a really, really like advantageous fight for you?
So kind of going off the list you had last time.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're surrounded by paint.
Yep.
There we have two different people shooting at them from two different angles.
Yep.
I think if it's the double, technically I also have range.
Yep.
Not the dualies. I don't know what those ones. Sorry, don't remember names. But yeah, I think I have range over them. What else? Ink, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe. In the end, the other three advantages are so big that like ink tank doesn't really matter much.
No,
But yeah,
not really. Yeah.
Paint and then like
and also
the two different
supplies.
angles.
They didn't see me, I guess.
I mean, yeah, probably yes.
Not that it matters anymore in that situation.
Yeah.
They're pretty dead already, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they probably knew you were there, but just tried to get the roller first.
Yeah.
Not sure, but yeah. Paint and teammates and like different angles are the most important ones here. You do outrange devils. It's a bit weird because they have like movement options, but you do outrange them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one as well.
If they can't roll, then yeah.
And I think that's the main things. Let's talk a bit about how you can improve on those, because it'd be a bit awkward just to talk about things without talking about how to actually improve on it. So that's all of this. How to improve. The main idea is just to pick out one of those things, because most of this comes down to awareness, right? Seeing those kind of warning signals in terms of paint, seeing where enemies are, so how we can set up good crossfires. So it ultimately mostly comes down to recognizing advantages and disadvantages faster. So it's mostly awareness training that we're trying to do. So the most important thing is really to pick out one relatively small thing. So if we, like in terms of taking good fights, something we might pick out is, I want to like take different angles than my team in the next like 10 games, or like in the session that I'm playing today. So we want to set ourselves very clear goals. Something like take different angles from my team and help them in fights while not being like in this kind of same position that they are. And then just like trying to focus on that goal specifically for a while. Because that way, instead of just having like an overall really big idea, like big jumble of things that you want to improve on, you can actually say, I want to improve on this specifically, and that makes it like a lot more efficient. And you can actually like measure your success a bit better. Yeah, so that's pretty much the most important thing for all these kinds of goals. All of these like I think have relatively simple goals. So for paint, something like the main idea would just I want to be more aware of where we have paint control and like where enemies could be hiding in that paint or something, and how I can use that paint to hide myself. And then we talked about the different angles idea already. Another idea might be like focusing on improving looking at the UI at the top, so we can notice when we have numbers advantage and we can notice when we have special advantage and stuff like that. Yeah, so that should be the general idea of how to improve, at least if you want to focus on improving as fast as you can, because that's a relatively efficient way to do it. Hello there. This video is cut together from a bunch of parts from a weekly live stream series that I do, where I give Splatoon coaching to someone. If you're interested in that, you can find a link in the description, or just tune in any Monday at 8 PM CEST, either on Twitch or YouTube.